On July 21, 1999, the Barcelona first team watched from the stands of Camp Nou as their under-14s played in the final of the Club World Cup. It should have been a relaxing moment, but when the number forgot his first touch, Pep Guardiola was on the edge of his seat. A few minutes later, he turned to Xavi and said, "I know you'll eventually retire me, but that kid will retire us both." In injury time, with the game tied, Andres Iniesta scored. Moments later, Guardiola rushed onto the pitch to present him with the trophy, telling him, "In 10 years, I'll be watching you from the stands again." Yet, he was mistaken. He ended up watching from the bench instead. It's no surprise that people found it hard to believe such an unassuming kid could become an all-time great. Andres Iniesta was born on May 11, 1984, in Fuentealbilla, a small village without a football pitch. He was the son of José Antonio Iniesta, a businessman, and Maria Luján Iniesta, a housekeeper. Growing up, Iniesta happily played futsal with friends at school and on the streets. His father, who had a brief and unsuccessful football career, was determined that he doesn't want his son wouldn't share that regret. So, he went through his phone and contacted an old manager, Pedro Camacho, who arranged a trial for Iniesta at Albacete. When he arrived, there were 200 kids competing for a few spots, but within 5 minutes, the coaches were so impressed with Iniesta that they told him he was too good to let the other kids play. Iniesta's family drove him 40 miles 3 times a week to training, convinced that his talent would eventually be recognized. He enjoyed the bus rides, often eating sandwiches with fruit for dessert. At age 12, during a major tournament in Madrid, he led Albacete to the semifinals, defeating Real Madrid and earning the tournament's Best Player award, which included a ticket to a theme park in Barcelona. This occurred together with an invitation to visit La Masia, creating a dilemma. Iniesta had previously declared himself a Real Madrid fan, and many expected him to join them. However, their scouts deemed him too small and hesitated, allowing Barcelona to sign him as the youngest player at La Masia. A year later, Iniesta began training with Barcelona's first team, which further embarrassed Real Madrid for missing out on him. They spent the next 7 years trying to rectify that error. After Iniesta won the Under-16 Euros, his father began negotiating a contract, but Barcelona had just spent 35 million euros on Saviola, leading them to lowball Iniesta's negotiations. This prompted his father to tell them, "We're going to Madrid." Fortunately, Barcelona's president, Joan Gaspard, intervened to secure Iniesta's future with the club. The following year, after winning the Under-19 Euros, Real Madrid grew increasingly desperate, with Iniesta's father claiming he had to ignore their persistent calls. At one point, even a 2-time World Rally champion, a passionate Madrid fan, tried to persuade him to switch clubs, but it was all in vain. At 16, Iniesta was promoted to Barcelona B, a decision supported by the coaching staff at La Masia. This was a challenge for him, as he had to compete with players aged 22 to 28, who were tougher and more experienced. Nevertheless, he persevered and eventually became the team captain. After a meeting between the youth coach and Louis van Gaal, who had just returned to the club, Iniesta was called up to the first team. He made his debut in 2002, and by 2005, he had more appearances than any other player on the team. However, 90% of those appearances were from the bench, leading to the sense that he was only a backup, starting when others were injured. The following season was particularly frustrating. When Xavi suffered an ACL injury, Iniesta seized control of the midfield. As Barcelona advanced to the Champions League final, he played every minute and consistently excelled. Yet, when the team sheet was released, he was surprisingly on the bench. His teammates were stunned. For the first 45 minutes, he watched as Barcelona struggled against a 10-man Arsenal. It was only when Samuel Eto'o approached the bench to ask why Iniesta wasn't playing that coach Frank Rijkaard realized his mistake. After making 3 substitutions, the game turned around, with Larsson assisting both goals and Belletti scoring the winner. Thierry Henry later remarked, "We all know the story of Larsson and Belletti, but the person who really hurt us that day was Andres Iniesta." Despite his impressive performance earning him a spot on the World Cup team, Iniesta returned to Barcelona to face the same challenges. Often benched, fetching water for the superstars, or playing out of position while critics claimed that 2 fragile midfielders could never work together. when Real Madrid made a serious attempt to sign him, triggering his release clause with a €60 million offer and a blank check. Iniesta declined, even though he was one of the lowest-paid players on the squad. Fortunately, this scare prompted Barcelona to renew his contract and make him a regular starter. However, Rijkaard continued to play him on the wing, and during the Euros, coach Luis Aragonés did the same. Remarkably, even while battling a stomach flu throughout half the tournament, Iniesta delivered a man-of-the-match performance in the semi-final, helping Spain win the Euros after a 44-year trophy drought and earning a spot in the tournament's team of the tournament. Still, the best thing to happen to Andres Iniesta that year was Pep Guardiola taking over the team. Unlike other coaches and critics, Guardiola embraced the idea of playing both Xavi and Iniesta together, and this marked the beginning of a new era. After a draw and a loss in Guardiola's first 2 league matches, with rumors of his dismissal, Iniesta went on to help the team remain unbeaten. However, Barcelona won only 6 out of the 12 league matches he missed due to injury. They were a transformed team when he played. Iniesta dominated the pitch not through force or fear, but with grace, except for the infamous goal against Chelsea, which was born from sheer frustration and had significant consequences for him. Following that match, Iniesta felt a pain in his right thigh, the same leg he used to score that goal. Just 4 days later, the medical staff ruled him out with his 4th muscle injury of the season, warning him that he either needed to stay off the pitch or risk ending his career. Yet when he left the team, Barcelona lost the 2 matches leading up to the Champions League final. With the treble at stake, Iniesta faced a tough decision. He stated, "I knew right then that I would play regardless of the risk. I wanted to win. I would have made that final even if both my legs were broken." Before the final, Sir Alex Ferguson famously remarked, "I'm not obsessed with Messi. Iniesta is the real danger." Just 10 minutes into the match, Iniesta assisted the goal that secured the trophy. After the game, Wayne Rooney called him the best player in the world, while Samuel Eto'o, who had previously praised him, simply told reporters, "I told you so." However, after the medical staff reviewed him post-match, it was clear that he had made a serious mistake. For the next 410 days, he would endure a grueling recovery. By September, Iniesta had spent 6 of the previous 10 months injured, taking a significant mental toll on him. Few knew the extent of his struggles, except for one report of him being spotted in tears at the training ground. 8 years later, he revealed that he fell into depression during his recovery. The situation grew even darker when Dani Jarque, the captain of Espanyol and one of his best friends, died suddenly from a heart attack. This loss pushed Iniesta into an even deeper emotional state. Fortunately, a year later, despite the ongoing challenges of leaving training early and recurring injuries, he persevered. Even after an injury scare caused him to miss the opening match of the World Cup and skip the second, he returned to score the goal that advanced Spain to the knockout stage. After 3-1-0 wins, Spain found itself in its first World Cup final. 3 hours before the match, Iniesta asked one of the team doctors to write a message on a shirt for him, wanting to dedicate his potential goal to someone special. In the 117th minute of the final, in true Iniesta style, he scored the most significant goal in Spanish history, securing the country's first World Cup title. As he celebrated, he revealed a message on his shirt, "Dani Jarque, always with us." This moment earned him the strength to finally close the darkest chapter of his life. And when he faced Espanyol again, their fans gave him a standing ovation. 6 months later, Iniesta finished second in the Ballon d'Or voting, with just 5% of the votes separating him from Lionel Messi, while Xavi completed the podium. By the end of that season, when Barcelona faced Manchester United in the Champions League final again, they delivered such an incredible performance that one could almost call it perfect, if not for the fact that United's only shot on target found the net. It was so dominant that, according to Xavi and Abidal, Wayne Rooney even asked them to slow down, joking, "We're already dead." It was a display of absolute supremacy, and nearly a year later, Iniesta was still part of an unbeaten run that included 38 matches across all competitions and eventually 55 consecutive league matches over 3 years, setting a record. If there were any doubts about Iniesta's dominance at his prime, they were erased during the 2012 Euros. He kicked off the tournament with a man-of-the-match performance against Italy, and Spain didn't concede a single goal for the rest of the tournament. Not necessarily due to a superhuman defense, but because Iniesta controlled the midfield so effectively that the opposing team struggled to maintain possession. In the match against Ireland, he contributed to 2 of the 4 goals, and in the game against Croatia, he assisted the late winner. Against France, he initiated the play that led to Spain's first goal, and during the penalty shootout against Portugal, he scored. In the final, he won the Man of the Match award for the 3rd time as Spain dismantled Italy 4-0. When it came time to present the tournament awards, Iniesta was not just named Player of the Tournament. In an era dominated by Ronaldo and Messi, UEFA recognized him as the best player in Europe. From that point on, Iniesta continued to rack up accolades. By December, he was back on the Ballon d'Or podium, and by the end of the season, he won the World Playmaker of the Year award, contributing 22 assists. He maintained this momentum the following year, and by 2014, he had been named the best midfielder in La Liga for the 4th consecutive year. Shortly after achieving these milestones, Luis Suarez joined the club, forming the famous MSN trio and heralding a new golden era for Barcelona. However, just as they were on the brink of a treble, Xavi announced his departure from the club at season's end. This wasn't unexpected, as he was 35 and Iniesta was 31. On that day, Iniesta vowed to ensure that the treble would serve as Xavi's farewell gift. Just 4 minutes into the Champions League final, he assisted Rakitic for the opening goal. 74 minutes later, as Iniesta exited the pitch, becoming the only player in history to win Man of the Match honors in a Euro, World Cup, and Champions League final, Xavi came on, marking the last time the 2 legends shared the field. For 3 more years, Iniesta managed to keep performing at a high level. In fact, he maintained his place on the Ballon d'Or shortlist for an additional year and became only the 3rd Barcelona player ever to receive a standing ovation at the Bernabeu, joining the ranks of Maradona and Ronaldinho. However, each year, injuries gradually diminished his capabilities, and by the 2017 to 2018 season, after enduring 7 injuries in a single year, Iniesta decided to leave Camp Nou for good. While his farewell was magnificent, no one could offer him the send-off he had given Xavi. Nonetheless, his old friend ensured that he wrote him a letter, which included the words, "Remember when they said we couldn't play together? Andres, we surely proved them wrong."